Batman the Dark Knight #0, written by Greg Hurwitz, art by Miko Swayan and Juan Jose Rip. This is essentially Bruce Wayne's origin story after the alley. So we see just a quick little 4-panel recap of yep, it was called Park Row before it was called Crime Alley. Pearl's falling in the gutter, Martha, and then he's sad. And we see him just finally having to deal with the grief and yes, his parents are gone, and we see him in his parents' closet. All their clothes are laid out on the floor, and Bruce is going through their stuff, and he's remembering his father, the kind-hearted man he was, never did anything wrong. He finds his father's watch and puts it on before finally coming to the terms of okay, my dad said there's always a reason for everything. There has to be a reason that my dad died. So he sneaks out of the manor and goes back down to the alley looking for anything. He comes across this homeless man who he goes up and he talks to him. And he's like, "Hey, mister, my parents died here last week. Did you see anything?" And he's like, "I didn't see nothing." "Oh, hey, wait a minute. You're that Wayne kid. Sucks about your dad, but he probably had a lot of enemies." And Bruce immediately lashes out. He's like, "My dad was a great man. He didn't hurt nobody." And the guy's like, "Yeah, no, maybe he was. I don't know. I don't care. But, nobody gets that rich without having enemies." And Bruce is just like, "Please, did you see anything? Help me figure out who did this." And he's like, "I'll tell you if you give me that watch." And Bruce is like, "I will literally give you anything except this watch." And the guy just turns away. Bruce takes off the watch, hands it to him, says "Okay, there. Now please tell me who did this. Who did you see?" And the guy just kicks Bruce over and just "All right, scram, kid. I stole your watch. Ha, ha, ha." And Bruce just has to go home and cry about it. Some time passes. He's a little bit older. And he's talking to someone who works at Wayne Enterprises. Looks like a janitor, custodian. And custodian basically tells him "Yeah, here's the deal. Your dad, he worked in a lot of different areas. He worked in steel and the railways and stuff like that. And those areas used to be very mob heavy. So the mob probably saw your dad as taking out of their pockets, and he made some enemies there. So do your diligence, look into everybody who had any business dealings with your dad, and I'm sure you'll find who's responsible." So at that point, he goes off to a boarding school. He has no time for friends. He is constantly writing in notebooks of basically the red yarn charts of oh, my father was in business with this person and then this person. And he was in a couple of boxing and fencing clubs, but besides that, he did nothing else socially. So then finally he comes home, celebrates his 18th birthday with Alfred, but then heads back down to what is now called Crime Alley and starts walking down it, sees a whole homeless population there, and basically says "Hey, do you know where I can find the guy who took my watch when I was a kid?" And they're like, "Yeah, he lives down by the bridge now." So he goes down to a bridge, finds the guy who's looking a lot worse for wear, and immediately starts threatening him. And he's like, "Hey, who did you see in the alley? Tell me or else." And he's like, geez, all right, I guess you could hurt me now. Joe Chill, I saw Joe Chill, so please don't hurt me. And Bruce is like, "All right. Hey, give me your watch." So he gets the watch back. Bruce looks over all of his notes he put throughout the entire time he was in his boarding school. And he's like, I've never even heard of Joe Chill. Who the hell is this guy? He must be a master assassin. And he finds a couple of leads. One of them's a biker bar where he goes in and he asks for Joe Chill's address. Everyone is like, "Oh, preppy kid asking for info. See if you can deal with this." And they start fighting him. Bruce immediately, without breaking a sweat, takes all of them out. He's like, "Okay, so an address, please." So he goes back home, picks up a gun from off the mantelpiece, and makes his way to Joe Chill's apartment. And inside is Joe, just drunk, sitting on the ground with a frown on his face. And he's like, "Hey, I'm Bruce Wayne." And he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." And immediately Bruce just lays into him "Who hired you? Who wanted my dad dead?" And he's like, "Dude, I didn't know who you were. I was just looking for some money for a drink. I saw the pearls on the lady, and I thought I'd take them. I didn't mean to even shoot her, but when she screamed, I just got jumpy." And he's like, "No, you had to have been hired by somebody." And he's like, "No, I'm just Joe Chill. That's it." And at that point, Bruce aims the gun at Joe's head, looking for revenge, but he pulls it back and walks out. And he's like, "This was literally just random chance. It wasn't any sort of hit. It wasn't the Court of Owls. It was just a drunk looking for some money. I can't believe that's it." And so at this point, Bruce makes the decision. He's like, "Okay, look, someone told me it's a big bad world out there. I can't help but wonder what else it has waiting in its dark alleys, peering out with glinting eyes and a bullet in the chamber. But I do know this, I'm going to find out. And we see him hopping on a plane to Tibet to become Batman. Also, art error on the final page. One of the kids is wearing a Superman t-shirt. I'm pretty sure that breaks everything we know about the New 52 timeline, but whatever. So, this wasn't bad. It was basically just how we know Batman's early origin story. It was the Batman Begins, he went out and he was going to go kill Joe Chill. It was just retold slightly differently and introduced this thing where, there was a different douchebag in an alley who took his father's watch, and yeah, that was whatever. But it wasn't bad. Art was fine. The narration throughout was fine. It was just telling the story of how Bruce became so jaded in his adolescence to then become Batman in his post-teenage years. So overall, I'd give it a 7. It's fine. It's not great. It's just the Batman origin story with the smallest possible twist.